The silent graves. The view screen should have shown a world. Instead, Captain Elena Vasquez stared at a graveyard. Aurora Prime had been humanity's jewel, a thriving colony of gleaming arcologies and floating gardens, home to 8.3 billion souls. Humans and Valari had built it together over 30 years, a testament to what two species could achieve when trust replaced fear. Elena had visited twice, walking through markets where human children played alongside young Valari, their crystalline forms refracting light into dancing rainbows. Now there was only ash. Captain. Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked. Orbital scan complete. No life signs. Atmospheric composition shows complete molecular incineration at ground level. The oceans are boiling. Elena's hands gripped the armrest of her command chair, knuckles white. The Defiant hung in space 300,000 kilometers from what remained of Aurora Prime, and even at this distance, the radiation readings made her tactical officer nervous. Through the view screen, the planet glowed with a sickly orange light, its surface covered in a web of cooling magma where cities had stood. Time of attack? Elena asked, her voice mechanical. 47 hours, 16 minutes ago, Chen replied. Based on debris field dispersal and thermal decay patterns. 47 hours. The Defiant had been 3 days away at maximum burn when the distress signal arrived. They'd pushed their engines past safety limits, praying they'd arrive in time to help evacuate to save someone. But the signal had been automated, triggered when Aurora Prime's defense grid detected the first weapon's fire. By the time human ears heard the scream, everyone who could scream was already dead. Show me the attack profile, Elena ordered. The main display shifted, replaced by a tactical reconstruction. Red icons materialized in orbit, 17 Valari heavy cruisers, emerging from quantum fold with perfect coordination. The Valari vessels that should have been Aurora Prime's protectors, that had stood honor guard over the colony for decades, had instead unleashed hellfire. The simulation showed lance beams carving through orbital platforms in seconds, then turning those same weapons on the planet below. Total duration of bombardment, 93 minutes, Chen reported. They glassed every major population center, destroyed all orbital infrastructure, then folded out. No transmissions, no demands, no reason, Elena finished. She'd seen the reports during the frantic journey here. No declaration of war. No political incident. No territorial dispute. Just silence, then slaughter. Her mind refused to accept it. For 100 years, humanity and the Valari had been bonded closer than any two species in known galactic history. When the Crimson Plague had threatened to collapse Valari molecular matrices, it was human scientists who worked 72 hours straight to synthesize a cure. They'd done it freely, asking nothing in return, while the Galactic Council watched and waited to see if humanity would leverage the Valari's desperation. Instead, humanity had saved them. And the Valari had wept tears of liquid crystal and sworn eternal friendship. Elena remembered the celebration on New Geneva. She'd been there, a young lieutenant, watching as Valari High Counselor Sarah placed her crystalline palm against the hand of human Ambassador Marcus Chen, their two species' highest honor. Never alone, Sarah had said, her voice chiming like bells. Never forgotten. You gave us tomorrow when we had none. We are yours as you are ours. Mixed families had followed. Humans couldn't biologically reproduce with Valari, but adoption crossed both ways. Shared colonies bloomed across neutral space. When the Karathi swarm attacked human shipping lanes 15 years ago, Valari battle fleets arrived within hours, and they fought with a ferocity that stunned the galaxy. The swarm had sued for peace within weeks. That was the species Elena knew. The friends she'd bled beside. The allies who'd become family. Not this. Not mass murder without cause or explanation. Captain, recovery teams are requesting permission to approach the planet, Lieutenant Morrison said from communications. Medical frigates are standing by. Elena closed her eyes. Tell them to scan for survivors first. Any sealed structures, underground facilities, anything with intact life support. Yes, ma'am. Morrison's fingers danced across her console. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the soft ping of scanning equipment. Finally, Morrison looked up, her face ashen. Captain, there's nothing. No survivors. The bombardment was thorough. They didn't miss a single shelter. The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Elena had known logically that no one could survive what the scans showed. But hearing it confirmed, knowing that 8.3 billion people had simply ceased to exist, including families, children, the Valari who lived among them. My sister, Elena whispered. Then louder, steadier, forcing herself to say it, "My sister Miranda was on Aurora Prime. Her husband. Their 3 children." She looked at Chin. "Do we have bodies? Anything we can?" Chin shook his head slowly. At the temperatures generated by the bombardment, organic and crystalline matter alike was reduced to constituent atoms. "I'm sorry, Captain. There's nothing to recover." Elena stood abruptly, needing to move, needing to do something other than sit and absorb horror. She paced the bridge, her crew watching with worried eyes. Miranda had been excited about the colony, had sent messages every week about the children's progress in their mixed-species school. Her youngest, Tomas, had befriended a Valari child named Ril, and the two were inseparable. Gone. All of them. Not even ashes remained. "Forensics report," Elena said, seizing on procedure like a lifeline. "Do we have identification on the attacking vessels?" "Yes, Captain," replied Commander Okonkwo from the forensics station. "Quantum fold signatures match the 7th Valari Honor Fleet. Ship registry confirms 17 heavy cruisers, including the flagship Crystal Dawn. Commanded by Fleet Admiral Terracor, a decorated veteran with 40 years of service." Terracor. Elena knew the name. She'd met him once at a joint military symposium. A warrior poet, they called him, honorable, philosophical, beloved by his crews. He'd written treatises on the ethics of warfare, arguing that military force should only ever be defensive, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak. And he'd led the extermination of Aurora Prime. "Have we received any communication from Valari space?" Elena asked. "Any explanation, any?" "Nothing, Captain," Morrison interrupted. "Radio silence from all Valari governmental channels. Their embassy stations have gone dark. Even civilian frequencies are quiet." Okonkwo cleared his throat. "Captain, there's something else. Something strange." Elena turned. "Show me." The display shifted to show communication logs, streams of data captured by Aurora Prime satellites in the moments before they were destroyed. Okonkwo highlighted specific segments. "These are standard military communication protocols, encrypted quantum channels between the Valari ships. But look at this." He expanded the timeline. "There's a 73-second gap here, right before the attack commenced. Total silence. Then when communications resume, they're using emergency override frequencies." "Override frequencies?" Elena moved closer. "Those are only for when primary channels are compromised." "Exactly. And there's more." Okonkwo pulled up another data stream. "We've detected trace signatures of a subspace broadcast pattern emanating from the outer system. It's faint, our satellites almost missed it, but the frequency matches nothing in our databases or Valari communication standards." Elena felt something shift in her chest, grief making room for something else. Questions. Could it be a weapons control signal? Possibly. But it's sophisticated. Military-grade encryption, multiple redundancies, and the signal trajectory suggests it originated outside the system entirely, then was relayed through a network of microsatellites we didn't even know were there. "Someone was watching," Elena said slowly. "Someone coordinated this. Or," Shin said carefully, "someone wanted it to look that way." "Captain, with respect, we're in shock. We're looking for explanations because the alternative, that our closest allies simply decided to murder billions of us, is incomprehensible." "Is it?" Elena turned to face her bridge crew. "I've known Valari for 20 years. I've fought beside them. I've mourned with them. And I'm telling you this doesn't make sense. Terracor wouldn't do this. The Valari wouldn't do this. Not without cause, not without warning, not without." "Without what, Captain?" Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Without becoming monsters? People change. Species change. Maybe we trusted too much. Maybe the Council was right to be cautious about cross-species alliances." Elena wanted to argue, but her mind flashed to the graveyard outside. 8.3 billion reasons to doubt everything she thought she knew. "Secure that anomalous signal data," she ordered Okonkwo. "Full analysis. I want to know where it came from, who sent it, and what it was transmitting. Morrison, keep scanning all Valari frequencies. The moment anyone breaks silence, I want to know." "Yes, Captain." Elena returned to her command chair, but she couldn't sit. Behind her eyes, she saw Miranda's last message, sent 3 days before the attack. "The kids want to know if you'll visit for Founding Day. Tomas says you promised to teach him to pilot a shuttle. Please come, Elena. I miss you." She'd replied that she'd try, that duty kept her busy, that she'd visit soon. Always soon. "Captain," Morrison said suddenly, I'm receiving an encrypted message. Personal channel. It's addressed to you specifically. Source unknown. Elena's blood went cold. Routed to my ready room. Chin, you have the bridge. She walked to her private office on legs that felt mechanical, closed the door and sat at her desk. The message icon blinked on her screen, red, marked urgent, encrypted with military-grade protocols that shouldn't exist outside official channels. Elena entered her command codes. The message decrypted, text only, no source identification. Captain Vasquez. I knew your sister. I am Valari. What happened at Aurora Prime was not our decision. We were used. They made us weapons against those we love. I have evidence. If you want truth, come to Crossroads Haven. Doc 47. Come alone. Come armed. Trust no one. A friend in crystal. Elena read it 3 times. Could be a trap. It could be manipulation, guilt, someone playing on her desperation for answers. Or it could be the truth. She thought of Miranda. Of Terracor, the warrior poet. Of 100 years of friendship burned to ash in 93 minutes. Someone had answers. And Elena would find them or die trying. She stood, sealed the message in encrypted storage and returned to the bridge. Chin set course for Crossroads Haven. Maximum burn. Captain? Chin looked confused. That's in neutral space between Valari and Karathi territory. Fleet Command wants us to return to New Geneva for debriefing. Noted. We'll debrief after Crossroads Haven. Captain. Elena's voice hardened. My ship, my orders, Lieutenant. Set the course. Chin hesitated, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. ETA 41 hours. Elena stared at the view screen at Aurora Prime's dying glow. 41 hours. Then she'd learn if her friends had betrayed her, or if something darker, something that could make killers of heroes, lurked in the spaces between stars. Either way, the silence would end. The dead deserved that much. Fractures in crystal. Crossroads Haven hung in the void like a mechanical flower, its 8 arms extending from a central hub where a dozen species conducted trade, diplomacy, and the quiet business of neutral space. Elena had been here twice before. Once for a cultural exchange, once to negotiate mining rights with the Karathi. Both times, it had felt like a celebration of galactic cooperation. Now it felt like walking into a tomb. The Defiant docked at Arm 6, far from the main commercial sectors. Elena had come with a security detail of 4, Lieutenant Chin, 2 Marines, and Specialist Reeves, whose cybernetic enhancements made her the closest thing humanity had to a walking weapons platform. They wore civilian clothes over light combat armor, sidearms concealed but accessible. Remember, Elena said as the airlock cycled, we're here for information, not confrontation. Stay alert, but don't start anything. And if they start something? Chin asked. Then we finish it. The corridor beyond the airlock was dimmer than Elena remembered. Emergency lighting cast everything in a harsh white glow, and the usual bustle of mixed-species traffic had thinned to a nervous trickle. A group of Karathi merchants hurried past, their insectoid heads swiveling nervously. A human family pressed against the wall, children held close. Fear. The station reeked of it. Elena's comm chirped. Captain, this is Defiant. Station control is being difficult. They're asking about our clearance levels and scanning protocols. They seem nervous. Everyone's nervous, Morrison. The galaxy just watched one alliance murder another. Keep them calm. We won't be long. Dock 47 was in the lower commercial ring, a section typically reserved for cargo transfer and bulk trading. Elena's team navigated through nearly empty corridors, their footsteps echoing. Twice they saw Valari civilians, crystalline forms refracting the harsh light, and both times the Valari saw them and fled. Can't say I blame them, Chin muttered. After Aurora Prime, I'm surprised there are any Valari on neutral stations at all. That's precisely why we need to talk to whoever sent that message, Elena replied. If the Valari are innocent, if they were manipulated, then we're about to start a war against the wrong enemy. And if they're not innocent? Elena didn't answer. She couldn't. Because if the Valari had genuinely chosen genocide, then 100 years of trust had been a lie, and the galaxy was about to burn. Dock 47's entrance was marked by flickering holographic signs advertising or processing services. The bay itself was empty except for a single small craft, a Valari scout ship, elegant and angular, its crystalline hull pulsing with faint bioluminescence. As Elena approached, a section of the hull became transparent, and a figure stepped through. Valari were beautiful in an alien way, humanoid in general shape but composed of living crystal that shifted through spectrums of light. Their faces were angular, geometric, with eyes like faceted gemstones. This one was smaller than average, with crystal formations that glowed a deep blue, indicating youth or emotional distress. Captain Vasquez. The voice was melodic, resonant, unmistakably Valari. I am Kale. Thank you for coming. I know you have no reason to trust me. Elena's hand rested near her sidearm. You said you knew my sister. Miranda Vasquezchen. Xenobotanist. She consulted with our terraforming teams on hybrid crop development. Kale's light dimmed, a sign of grief. She showed me pictures of her children. Tomas wanted to join the Stellar Academy. He asked me about void navigation, about seeing the stars. Elena's throat tightened. That was true. All of it. Why did you kill them? We didn't. The words burst from Kale like breaking glass. Captain, please. I understand your rage, your grief. But we didn't do this. The 7th Honor Fleet didn't choose to attack Aurora Prime. They were hijacked, controlled, turned into weapons against their will. That's convenient, Chen said coldly. 8 billion dead, and suddenly it wasn't your fault. Kale's crystalline form flickered with patterns Elena recognized. Shame, desperation, pleading. I can prove it. That's why I contacted you. But we must move quickly. There are those, both human and Valari, who want this war. Who need it. Elena studied the young Valari. Every instinct she developed over 20 years of service screamed that Kale was telling the truth. But instinct had failed before. Show me your proof. Kale gestured toward the scout ship. Inside. I have data cores from the Crystal Dawn recovered by irregular means. They show what happened in the moments before the attack. But Captain, there's more. Aurora Prime wasn't the first. This has happened before to other species, other alliances. We've all been pieces in someone else's game. Elena exchanged glances with Chen, who shook his head slightly. Don't trust this. But Elena thought of Miranda, of TerraCore, of 100 years of friendship. You first, she told Kale. My people stay outside until I'm sure this isn't an ambush. Kale nodded and walked up the scout ship's ramp. Elena followed, her hand on her weapon. The interior was typical Valari design. Organic curves, crystalline interfaces, everything flowing and beautiful. Kale moved to a central console and activated a holographic display. This is the command log from the Crystal Dawn, 43 minutes before the attack on Aurora Prime. The display showed a standard Valari bridge, crystalline officers at their stations, Fleet Admiral TerraCore standing at the center, his form glowing with the confident gold of command authority. The audio was in Valari musical speech, but translated text scrolled below. All stations report ready for the quantum fold to Nexus Station, TerraCore said. Navigation, confirm coordinates. Coordinates confirmed, Admiral. Nexus Station, neutral sector 7. Fold in 90 seconds. Standard procedure. A routine diplomatic mission. Then the display flickered. What was that? Elena asked. Watch, Kale whispered. The image stabilized, but something was wrong. The bridge crew's movements became slightly jerky, asynchronous. TerraCore's glow shifted from gold to a sickly purple. Confusion, distress. He turned to his communications officer. Commander Vale, I'm receiving something on my neural link. Is there? Then his body seized. Every Valari on the bridge stiffened simultaneously, their lights flashing in chaotic patterns. When they moved again, it was with mechanical precision. TerraCore's voice, when he spoke, was hollow, inflectionless. Navigation. New coordinates. Aurora Prime. Admiral? The navigation officer's voice was confused. That's a human colony world. We have no authorization to override. Authorization code Omega-3 Epsilon. Execute immediately. The navigator hesitated. Admiral, that code doesn't exist in our. Execute. The scene jumped forward. Now the display showed tactical screens, Aurora Prime growing on sensors, the Honor Fleet dropping from fold space directly above the planet. TerraCore stood motionless, his crystalline form pulsing with that same sickly purple light. Weapons, he said. Target all population centers. Execute planetary sterilization protocol. Admiral. The weapons officer's voice was horrified. Those are civilian targets. There are humans down there, our friends, our. Compliance is mandatory. Fire. The weapons officer tried to move away from his console. His body convulsed, fighting against itself. Then his hands moved of their own accord, entering firing sequences. On the display, lance beams lanced down from the fleet, and Aurora Prime began to die. Throughout it all, Terracor stood like a statue, his eyes blank, his voice continuing to issue orders in that dead monotone. In the final moments before the recording ended, Elena saw something that made her blood freeze, a single tear of liquid crystal sliding down Terracor's face, the only sign that somewhere inside the hijacked shell, the Admiral was screaming. The display went dark. Elena stood in silence, her mind reeling. They were possessed, she whispered. Neural override. Complete motor control. Yes. Kale's voice was thick with grief. The Valari neural matrix interfaces directly with our ships through biocrystalline links. It's how we achieve such perfect coordination. But someone found a way to hack that link, to broadcast override signals that turned us into puppets. Elena thought of the anomalous subspace signals her crew had detected. The relay network. Someone transmitted commands to the Honor fleet. Not just commands. Complete takeover protocols. They made us pull the triggers, Captain. They made us murder our friends while we screamed inside our own bodies. Where is Terracor now? Elena asked quietly. Kale's light dimmed to near darkness. Dead. He shattered himself. When the override protocols released, when he regained control and realized what he'd done. Valari can choose to destabilize our molecular matrices. It's painless. Final. 23 officers of the 7th Honor Fleet made the same choice. Elena closed her eyes, imagining the horror, gaining consciousness to find yourself standing over the graves of billions you just murdered. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry yet. Kale pulled up another display. Because this isn't the first time. Look. The hologram showed a historical record, dated 94 years prior. The Synthesis War, Kale narrated. The Therian and the Eshtar, two species who had formed a powerful alliance. They were developing technology that would have revolutionized quantum folding, made travel nearly instantaneous. Then, without warning, the Therian flagship opened fire on an Eshtar nursery colony. 3 billion young killed in hours. The war lasted 8 years. Both species were decimated. The technology was lost. Another record appeared. 143 years ago. The Meridian Collective and the VOR. Joint research into AI consciousness, making incredible breakthroughs. Then a VOR research station suffered a complete systems failure that looked like sabotage. Evidence pointed to Meridian operatives. The alliance shattered, violence erupted, and both species retreated to their home systems. More records cascaded across the display. 6 separate incidents over 3 centuries, each following the same pattern. A strong alliance between rising powers developing dangerous technology or military capabilities, then sudden betrayal and war that destroyed both sides. Every time, Kale said, the Galactic Council expressed regret, offered mediation and ultimately stepped in to stabilize the situation. And every time, the survivors became subordinate client states of Council authority. Elena felt sick. You're saying the Council orchestrated all of this? Not the entire Council. But there's a faction within it, the Triad Hegemony. 3 ancient species who've held power for over 2,000 years. The Architects, the Sovereigns and the Watchers. They control the Council's military apparatus, its intelligence networks and its economic systems. They've maintained that power by ensuring no alliance of younger species ever becomes strong enough to challenge them. By turning us against each other. Exactly. And humanity and the Valari were their greatest threat. Our alliance was too strong, too integrated. Our combined fleets outnumbered theirs. Our joint research was advancing too quickly. So they activated their contingency. Elena paced the small cabin, mind racing. Do you have proof? Evidence of Triad involvement. Some. We tracked the override signal transmissions backward through the relay network. The origin points lead to systems controlled by shell corporations owned by sovereign interests. We found manufacturing records for the relay satellites, commissioned by Architect Industrial Concerns. And we intercepted communications suggesting the Watchers knew about the Aurora Prime attack 3 weeks before it happened. Circumstantial, Elena said. Not enough for an accusation at the Council level. No. But it's enough to start investigating. And Captain, there's more. Kale pulled up a real-time tactical map of Galactic Council space. A red warning icon pulsed near the Karathi sectors. 6 hours ago, a Karathi defense fleet suffered similar anomalous behavior. They're currently on intercept course with a sovereign colony world. If they attack, the sovereigns will respond with overwhelming force. The Karathi will be annihilated and another potential alliance will die. Can we stop it? Maybe. If we can prove what's happening, if we can expose the override technology in real time, we might prevent another massacre. But we'd need to reach the Karathi fleet, disable the relay satellites transmitting the override signals, and do it all before the Triad realizes we know. Elena looked at the young Valari, seeing the determination in the flickering patterns of light across Kale's form. Why are you doing this? You're risking everything, your career, your life, your species standing with the Council. Because Terracor was my mentor, Kale said quietly. He taught me that honor means protecting those who can't protect themselves. He died believing he'd betrayed everything he stood for. I won't let that be his legacy. I won't let the Triad turn us into monsters again. Elena made her decision. Chin, she called on her comm, get back to the ship. Prep for immediate departure and patch me through to Fleet Command. Priority Alpha 1. Captain? Chen's voice was wary. We have new intel on Aurora Prime. We also have a situation developing with the Karathi that could go critical. I need authorization to pursue. Minutes later, Elena stood in the scout ship facing a holographic projection of Admiral Sarah Okafor, head of Human Fleet Command. Elena had served under Okafor during the Karathi swarm conflict. The Admiral was brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and incorruptible. Let me see the data, Okafor said after Elena's briefing. Elena transmitted everything. The Crystal Dawn logs, the historical records, the evidence of Triad involvement. Okafor watched in silence, her face growing harder with each revelation. If this is true, Okafor finally said, we're looking at a conspiracy that spans centuries. The Council's entire power structure is built on manufactured conflict. Yes, ma'am. And they're about to do it again with the Karathi. Do you trust this Valari informant? Elena glanced at Kale. My instincts say yes. And right now, instinct is all I have. Okafor was silent for a long moment. Captain Vasquez, I'm giving you operational discretion. Take the Defiant in this. Go. Intercept the Karathi fleet. If you can prove this override technology exists and stop another Aurora Prime, do it. But Captain, if this goes wrong, if you fail, the consequences will be catastrophic. The Human-Valari alliance will be permanently shattered, and we'll likely find ourselves at war with half the galaxy. Understood, Admiral. And Elena? Okafor's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry about Miranda. We'll find who's responsible. All of them. Yes, ma'am. We will. The connection closed. Elena turned to Kale. Welcome to the Defiant. Let's go save your people and mine from starting a war. Thank you, Captain. Kale's form glowed with gratitude. But we're not saving them from a war. We're preventing them from becoming weapons in someone else's. As they returned to the Defiant, Elena felt the grief that had consumed her since Aurora Prime transformed into something sharper, more focused. Whoever had murdered her sister, whoever had turned friends into killers, they'd made a mistake. They'd left witnesses. And witnesses could testify. The Defiant broke dock, its engines flaring as it accelerated toward Karathi space. Behind them, Crossroads Haven receded into the darkness. Ahead, somewhere in the void, ancient powers played games with younger species' lives. But the game was about to change. Because Elena Vasquez had learned something in 20 years of service. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't superior technology or military might. It was truth, spoken by those with nothing left to lose. The Council's reckoning. The Galactic Council chamber hung in orbit above Centralis Prime, a massive crystalline sphere where 47 species gathered to debate the fate of civilizations. Elena had seen it in broadcasts, read about it in history texts, but standing in the observation deck of the Defiant as they approached, she felt the weight of its significance. This was where galactic law was made. Where wars were authorized or prevented. Where species rose to prominence or fell into obscurity. And somewhere in that glittering sphere, hidden among the legitimate representatives, were those who'd orchestrated Aurora Prime. Captain, we're receiving final docking clearance, Morrison reported. Council security is extensive. They're requiring full weapon surrenders, escort protocols, and our entire crew manifest. Expected, Elena said. She turned to Kale, who stood beside her, the Valari's crystalline form dimmed with tension. You sure you're ready for this? The moment we present evidence against the Triad, they'll come after you. Your career, your reputation, possibly your life. Kale's light flickered in patterns Elena had learned meant determination. My mentor died believing he was a monster. That's worse than any death the Triad could give me. 12 hours earlier, they'd reached the Karathi fleet, 17 warships on intercept course with Sovereign Colony Beta 9. Elena had transmitted every piece of evidence Kale possessed, begged them to stand down to investigate before opening fire. The Karathi fleet commander, a massive insectoid named Thresher, had listened with compound eyes reflecting a dozen emotions. Why should I trust humans and Valari? Thresher had demanded. You murdered each other at Aurora Prime. Perhaps this is tricked to prevent us from taking deserved vengeance against the Sovereigns for their mining incursions. Because in 30 minutes, Elena had replied, your ships are going to experience neural override, and you're going to kill 5 million Sovereign civilians. And when you regain control, you'll remember every death, every scream, and you'll have to live with what they made you do. Something in her voice, the raw grief of experience, had penetrated. Thresher agreed to delay, to investigate the supposed relay satellites broadcasting override signals. Kale had pinpointed their locations using tracking algorithms from the Aurora Prime data. What they'd found had changed everything. The Karathi had deployed strike teams to the coordinates, expecting perhaps hidden weapon platforms or automated defense systems. Instead, they found sophisticated relay networks, broadcasting complex neural override protocols specifically tailored to Karathi neurology. And when Karathi intelligence analysts traced the command authorization codes embedded in the broadcasts, they found digital fingerprints leading directly to Watcher intelligence services. The Triad had been caught mid-manipulation. And they knew it. Now Elena stood in the Council's visitor gallery, Kale beside her, watching as representatives from 47 species took their positions in the tiered amphitheater. Each species had a designated platform that floated in the sphere's interior, arranged in concentric circles around the central speaking floor. At the highest tier, in positions of honor and authority, sat the Triad hegemony. The architects were beings of living metal, their forms angular and precise, faces like geometric sculptures that never showed emotion. The Sovereigns appeared vaguely reptilian, covered in scales that shifted through iridescent colors, their eyes ancient and calculating. The Watchers were the most alien energy beings contained in crystalline matrices, their true forms visible only as patterns of light and probability. They'd ruled the Council for 2,000 years. And they'd done it by ensuring no one else grew strong enough to challenge them. The emergency session will now commence, announced the Council Arbiter, a neutral AI with no political affiliations. We gather to address the crisis between humanity and the Valari, and the recent incidents involving the Karathi Defense Fleet. Ambassador Thren of the Architects has requested to speak first. An architect representative floated to the central platform, its metallic form gleaming under the chamber's lights. Honorable representatives, we face a tragedy that threatens the foundation of galactic peace. The unprovoked attack on Aurora Prime by Valari forces has shattered one of our longest-standing alliances. We grieve with humanity for their losses. However, we must address the reality that the Valari military committed an act of genocide. Elena's fists clenched. Beside her, Kale's light flickered with barely contained rage. We propose immediate sanctions against the Valari Confederation, Thren continued. Suspension of Council voting rights, military oversight by Council peacekeepers, and reparations to humanity. Only through accountability can we. Point of order. Elena's voice cut through the chamber. Every representative turned to look at her. Council security moved to intercept, but the Arbiter's mechanical voice stopped them. The human Captain Elena Vasquez has invoked witness testimony rights under Council Charter Article 17. She may speak. Thren's metallic face somehow conveyed displeasure. This is highly irregular. The witness protocols are for member species, not military officers of. Article 17, Section 9, Kale said, stepping forward. Any individual with material evidence relevant to Council proceedings may testify, regardless of rank or species affiliation. It's your own law, Ambassador Thren. Will you honor it or demonstrate the Triad's contempt for the rules they claim to uphold? Dangerous words. A ripple of surprise spread through the chamber. Few junior representatives spoke so directly to the Triad. But Thren simply inclined its head. Very well. Let the captain speak. We have nothing to hide. Elena and Kale descended to the central platform. Elena activated her data slate and holographic displays materialized around them, the bridge recording from the Crystal Dawn showing Terracor's possession. The chamber fell silent as representatives watched the Valari Admiral convulse, watched his eyes go blank, watched him order the murder of billions while a single crystal tear traced down his face. This is Fleet Admiral Terracor 43 minutes before Aurora Prime, Elena said. He wasn't acting under orders. He was hijacked. Neural override protocols broadcast through a relay network turned the entire 7th Honor Fleet into puppets. They weren't making choices. They were weapons, aimed and fired by someone else. Murmurs spread through the chamber. A Valari representative in the mid-tiers began to glow with hope. But Thren's voice cut through the noise. A compelling fabrication, Captain. But we have only your word that this recording is genuine. The Valari could have manufactured this evidence to escape accountability. Then explain this. Kale expanded the display showing the relay satellite network, the tracking data, the origin points leading to sovereign shell corporations and architect industrial concerns. These satellites were broadcasting override protocols specifically designed for Valari neural matrices. They were positioned weeks before the Aurora Prime attack. Someone planned this. Someone built the infrastructure to turn us into murderers. A sovereign representative floated forward, scales shifting to aggressive reds. Circumstantial speculation. You show satellites in public space and assume conspiracy rather than coincidence. The Triad has no motive to engineer such horror. Don't you? Elena's voice was steel. She pulled up the historical records Kale had shown her. 94 years ago, the Therian-Eshtar alliance was destroyed by a similar incident. 143 years ago, the Meridian-Vor partnership collapsed under suspicious circumstances. 6 times in 3 centuries, rising alliances have been shattered by sudden betrayals, and each time, the survivors became subordinate to the Council's authority. Now the chamber erupted. Representatives from younger species began accessing their own historical databases, confirming Elena's claims. Voices rose in shock, anger, dawning realization. The Triad's representatives remained calm, but Elena saw the tension in their positions. You maintained your power, Elena continued, by ensuring no one else could accumulate it. By turning allies into enemies, by manufacturing conflicts that destroyed potential rivals. Aurora Prime wasn't an anomaly. It was standard procedure. Thren's voice boomed through the chamber, mechanical and cold. These are serious accusations, Captain. Do you have proof of Triad involvement? Not speculation, not historical patterns, but concrete evidence that we authorized the Aurora Prime attack. Elena hesitated. The evidence they had was strong but indirect. The Triad could claim ignorance, call it rogue elements, shift blame to subordinates. Without a direct connection, without someone to testify that the Triad's leadership had explicitly ordered. The chamber's lights flickered. Then alarms began screaming. Attention, the Arbiter announced. We are detecting anomalous quantum fold signatures. Multiple vessels entering Council space without authorization. Configuring as 15 Karathi battlecruisers on direct approach vector to this station. Chaos erupted. Representatives began shouting, demanding explanations. Council security mobilized. On the main display, Elena saw the Karathi fleet dropping from fold space, weapons hot, clearly preparing to attack the Council station itself. They're going to kill us all, someone shouted. The Karathi have gone mad. No. Elena's voice cut through the panic. She pulled up tactical scans, highlighting the energy signatures around the Karathi ships. Look at these readings. The same override broadcast patterns we detected before. Someone just activated the contingency. Someone's trying to make the Karathi destroy this Council session before we can expose them. Preposterous. A Watcher representative's energy form pulsed with what might have been indignation. We would never. Prove it, Kale challenged. Captain Vasquez, can you trace those broadcast signals? Morrison, Elena called on her comm to the Defiant, emergency scan. Find the source of those override transmissions. Now. On the display, the Karathi fleet continued its approach. 2 minutes to firing range. The Council's defensive platforms were activating, preparing to return fire. If shooting started, the Karathi would be massacred. Another alliance destroyed, more evidence of younger species instability. Captain, I've got it. Morrison's voice was triumphant. The broadcast is coming from inside the Council station. Sublevel 93 maintenance sector. Encrypted transmission array that's not on any official manifest. Elena turned to the Arbiter. Seal sublevel 93. Dispatch security teams. We need that transmission stopped now. The Arbiter lacks authority to, Thren began. I invoke Council Charter Article 42, shouted a representative Elena didn't recognize, some mid-tier species she'd never heard of. Emergency powers during active threat to Council proceedings. The Arbiter can act. Seconded, called another voice. Then another. Then dozens. The younger species, the ones who'd been subordinate to the Triad for centuries, were suddenly united in opposition. Motion carried, the Arbiter announced. Security teams dispatching. On the chamber's displays, Everyone watched as Council security forces breached Sublevel 93. The footage showed a hidden facility, far more sophisticated than any maintenance sector should be, quantum transmission arrays, neural mapping computers, and at the center, 3 operators wearing insignia of Triad Intelligence Services. They tried to fight. They failed. And as security dragged them away, Elena's scanning team activated the compromised systems, pulling data logs that showed everything. 90 seconds to Karathi firing range. The override signal is terminating, Morrison reported. The Karathi fleet is slowing. Ships are breaking formation, looks like they're regaining autonomous control. The chamber held its collective breath as the Karathi vessels drifted to a stop, still within firing range but no longer advancing. Then a communication channel opened. Commander Thresher's face appeared on the main display, compound eyes wide with horror. Council representatives, Thresher's voice was shaking. My fleet just experienced, we were not in control. We were screaming inside our own bodies, unable to stop ourselves from arming weapons, targeting this station. Someone made us. The massive Karathi's voice broke. They made us into weapons. Just like Aurora Prime. Silence filled the chamber. Then every eye turned to the Triad's representatives. Your operatives, Elena said quietly. Your facility. Your override technology. Still want to claim this was rogue elements? Still want to deny that you've been manufacturing conflicts for centuries to maintain your power? Thren stood motionless. The sovereign representative's scales had faded to gray, shock or fear. The Watcher's energy forms flickered erratically. This council is suspended, the Arbiter announced, pending investigation of these allegations. Per Charter Article 67, the Triad hegemony is hereby placed under temporary oversight by a coalition of younger species representatives. All Triad military forces are ordered to stand down. All Triad intelligence operations are suspended. Any resistance will be met with the full authority of the Council's collective defense forces. You have no right, Thren began. We have every right. The voice belonged to the Valari High Counselor who'd been silent until now. You turned us into monsters. You made us murder our closest allies. You've manipulated galactic civilization for 2,000 years, and you dare claim we have no right to hold you accountable? Representatives from dozens of species rose, voices joining in condemnation. The chamber that had been dominated by Triad authority for millennia was suddenly united against them. Elena watched as Council security surrounded the Triad representatives, as the ancient powers that had ruled the galaxy for 2,000 years were formally placed under arrest. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and grief. Miranda was still dead. Aurora Prime was still ash. 8 billion lives couldn't be restored by justice. But they could be honored by it. 3 months later, Elena stood on Aurora Prime. Terraforming crews, human and Valari working together, had begun the long process of healing the world. The radiation had been cleansed, the glass surface broken and seeded with engineered bacteria that would, over decades, restore soil. It would never be what it was. But it could become something new. Kale stood beside her, along with Commander Thresher, and representatives from a dozen other species. They'd come for the memorial dedication, a monument of crystal and stone, bearing the names of every soul lost at Aurora Prime. 8.3 billion names, carved in letters so small you needed magnification to read them all. The investigation is complete, Kale told her. The Triad leadership authorized everything. Aurora Prime, the historical incidents, all of it. They called it stability maintenance. They genuinely believed they were protecting the galaxy by preventing any alliance from growing strong enough to challenge Council authority. How many are standing trial? Elena asked. 47 Triad officials. Hundreds more are implicated. The Council's Reform Commission is drafting new governance structures, rotating leadership, mandatory term limits, transparency requirements. It won't be perfect, but it's a start. Thresher clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. My people have requested formal alliance with humans and Valari. We believe 3 species who understand manipulation might better resist it together. We'd be honored, Elena said. She looked at the names stretching into the distance. Found Miranda Vasquez, Richard Chin, Tomas, Maria and Sophie Chin. A family that should have lived, should have grown old, should have seen stars her nephew would never navigate. I've been thinking about TerraCore, Elena said quietly. About all the Valari who thought they were murderers, who shattered themselves in grief. They deserve to know they were innocent. The Council has formally exonerated the 7th Honor Fleet, Kale replied. Their names are being added to the memorial. Victims, not perpetrators. It doesn't erase what they were forced to do, but it's something. It's everything, Elena said. Truth. Accountability. That's all the dead can ask from the living. Above them, ships passed in orbit, human, Valari, Karathi, and others flying in joint patrol formations. A new alliance, born from ashes, built on the determination that what happened at Aurora Prime would never happen again. Children began arriving, refugees from other worlds, some human, some Valari, some Karathi, and species Elena was still learning about. They carried seedlings, engineered plants that could survive Aurora Prime's harsh conditions. Under adult supervision, they began planting them around the memorial. A human girl, maybe 6 years old, worked alongside a young Valari whose crystalline form barely reached her shoulder. They struggled together to dig a hole deep enough, laughing when their tools tangled. The Valari child's light flickered in patterns of joy. Elena thought of Tomas and his friend Ril, who'd never gotten to grow up together. But these children would. Captain, Kale said, thank you. For listening. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. You gave me the truth, Elena replied. That's worth more than vengeance ever could be. She knelt, pressed her palm against the memorial stone, felt the carved letters of her sister's name beneath her fingers. I'm sorry I wasn't there, she whispered. But I promise, what they did to you, to all of you, it meant something. The galaxy is changing. You didn't die for nothing. The sun was setting on Aurora Prime, weak and red through the still recovering atmosphere, but setting nonetheless. A day ending. A night coming. And after night, inevitably dawn. Elena stood, looked at the children planting trees that would take 50 years to mature, and made a choice. She could carry grief forever, could let the weight of 8 billion deaths crush her into nothing. Or she could do what Miranda would have wanted. Plant seeds, nurture growth, and trust that the future would be worth the cost of the present. Come on, she said to Kale and Thresher. We have work to do. The Council's Reform Commission needs our testimony, and there are a dozen other alliances that need to hear what we learned. The Triad is gone, but their systems remain. We need to dismantle them piece by piece. A lifetime's work, Thresher observed. At least, Elena agreed. But what else are we going to do? The dead deserve justice. The living deserve truth. And the future deserves a galaxy where friendship isn't a weapon waiting to be turned against you. They walked back to their ships together. 3 species who'd been made into weapons, who'd chosen to become allies instead. Behind them, the memorial stood silent witness as the first trees took root in Aurora Prime's healing soil. The galaxy had changed. Not through war, not through vengeance, but through 3 people who'd refused to accept that betrayal was inevitable, that manipulation was simply how power functioned. They demanded better. And in demanding, they'd made it possible. Elena looked back one last time at the memorial, at the children still planting, at the ships flying overhead in formation. Miranda would never see this. But her death had helped make it real. That would have to be enough. The Defiant lifted from Aurora Prime as the sun finally set, carrying Elena toward a galaxy that was broken but healing, corrupt but reforming, wounded but determined to survive. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, other ancient powers might be watching, other manipulators might be planning their moves. But they'd learned something today, something the Triad had forgotten in their 2,000 years of control. The young species remembered. They learned. They grew. And they would never be weapons again.